Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology turned podcast. Everyone, I remember how to do that. That is exciting. Welcome into the program. I hope that you have had a wonderful couple of weeks. Computer America certainly has not. It's been a different kind of time, and let's just say, ladies and gentlemen, Craig Crossman, I would never expect him to be much of a camper, but for the last couple of weeks where we've had no electricity or running water, Craig did amazing camping in his own house. So as long as he still has his bed and, and all of his creature comforts, he handled it well. So, and we all did. So everyone, welcome into the program. We'll catch you up on exactly what I'm talking about here in just a little bit. But before we get to that, let's just mention computeramerica.com. Some plans in the near future, but for now, if you want to find anything that we talk about, past shows, future shows, show notes, articles, podcast, video archives, all that and more, computeramerica.com. And then depending on what happens here in the next week or so, always our YouTube channel. You should check that out. That's where we keep all of our videos. You can see years and years and years worth of videos, honestly going back probably 11 or 12 years. Lots of videos there, and of course all of our segments with Ralph Bond in particular, who is our guest today. And also on the podcast services, you can find, I think, our most recent about 500 episodes. So if you feel like doing some light listening, you're waiting in line to vote or something like that, catch up on the most recent couple of 100. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead, bring on our guest. And ladies and gentlemen, it is November 1st. I hope all of you had a great Halloween. Ralph, we joked about this before, that his costume just he carried it over. It's okay. So everyone, welcome back onto the program. He is our science and tech trends correspondent, Weird Science. Ralph, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah. The reference to Halloween last night, we had about 800 kids come through the neighborhood. That was fun. It was great. This is not this business on my eye. Oh, wait, this eye over here. There we go. It's not part of my costume. I had a hemorrhage in the white of my eye that was particularly bad, and it's now migrated into kind of a bruise. It's very benign. It just looks scary. So that's my Halloween costume layover.
Gotcha. Yeah, and again, I'm glad that it looks a little bit worse than it feels. And,
yes.
And ladies and gentlemen, you can see that there. If you're watching the video portion, hey, not only will you see Ralph and his wonderfully scary eye, you'll be able to see the show notes that
yes,
Ralph
exactly.
also puts together. The show notes include, all the 4 articles that we're going to talk about today,
right,
including links to anything and everything. And it's just a great thing to follow along. So if you check out the video portion. It's a lot of fun. So Ralph, even before we get into, kind of what we try to do here today, I want to tell everyone, because this is our first show back from, back from Hurricane Helene. So, real quick, and I'm not trying to garner any sympathy here. Everything has worked out okay so far, but we were in a car accident. I think that was like September 17th or something like that. And I think I had to cancel the show that week. And then the week after, I told Ralph, there might be some rain, and I can't, guarantee that, we're going to have electricity at the time that we were supposed to record. So, because, it's looking like a little bit of rain. Ralph, what ended up happening was about a month of no water, a month of no running water, still no drinkable water, 2 weeks of no electricity, 3 weeks of no internet, and one of the worst flooding since the 1916 flooding here in Asheville, North Carolina. I know that Helene is like old news to a lot of people, and they're like, oh yeah, you're talking about that thing? That thing's been forever. Yeah, Ralph, hurricane in the mountains. Who had ever heard such a thing?
Yeah, it's crazy. It might be something in the past in the news cycle, which changes every single day with today's disaster and problem.
Yeah.
But for you guys living through it, oh my gosh, my heart goes
Yeah,
out to you. And I salute you for your courage.
yeah, no, it's been okay. A lot of our friends and neighbors and a lot of people in the city have lost, roofs and homes and so much in their businesses. But we're relatively lucky. Luckily, we just had like a little bit of a mudslide under our driveway, so I've had to get a lot of steps in, a lot of walking. But other than that, it's we've just been getting through it like everyone else. And hey, we got through it because we are here on the program.
Yay.
Talking to you and talking to, of course, all of our audience out there. So thank you so much for for indulging me as I kind of do in a little aside as to where Computer America has been. Now, with that being said, Ralph, why don't we go ahead and tell the nice folks who, hey, if this is the first time you're tuning in, oh my goodness, what a weird time to, really pick up the show. But for anyone new out there, Ralph, tell them what we usually try to do here on the show.
Absolutely. And after all these natural disasters and man-made disasters and everything that happen every day all across the globe, what Ben and I do every Friday is highlight 4 articles that show us key trends and developments in everything from artificial intelligence, robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, agricultural technology, space research, physics, you name it, all across the board. But here's the key, and this is why this is so important for everybody. Most important of all, we're going to give you an oasis of positive news thanks to the world of science and technology. After 4 stories and our honorable mentions we'll get into later, you're going to walk away, I hope, feeling encouraged and hopeful about the future instead of the normal news cycle, which just makes you want to jump off a bridge, right?
Yeah, there you go. No, and I think story number 1 for a lot of people out there, the housing crisis, the housing. I'm sure a lot of people out there know mortgages are double, rents double, everything is just really awful. And one of the key drivers of that is we're not an economics podcast, but supply and demand.
Right.
You need houses. There's not enough houses. Things go a little sideways. Story number 1, hey, what if you just, make another home out of recycled water bottles? And I've certainly used a lot of those recently. An actual use for them after drinking. So let's talk about story number 1.
Yeah, this is a great example of a clever idea. It may not be earth-shaking breakthroughs in terms of technology or science, but it's just a clever combination of ideas. So here's the headline. This comes from an outlet called The Cool Down, which you can access through MSN. And the headline is Startup Recycles Plastic Water Bottles into Remarkable 3D Printed Homes. And the subtitle is, and it could help address, as Ben was alluding to, our nation's housing crisis. I just love this story. It's just such a clever one. Here we go. There's a California company called Azure Printed Homes, and they use recycled plastic bottles to quote unquote 3D print homes. Now, of course, 3D printed homes, that's not a new concept. We all know that. But Azure's process is different from most others because it prints complete housing modules in a factory instead of at the home's location. So step aside here for a second. If you've watched our show or you're familiar with this field of building construction, usually you have a gigantic kind of dispenser on site that's dispensing the quote unquote construction ink on a foundation over and over and over again, building up the walls of a building. That's the usual process. These guys do the complete printing in their factory. And then these factory-made homes can be shipped anywhere in the country as components and assembled on site. So the outer shell of one of the company's home models, one of them, for example, uses 150,000 plastic bottles. What a great way to use these plastic bottles that still, unfortunately, wind up in the landfill, even though the soda pop industry has gone to great lengths to make them completely recyclable, including the cap. But the plastic comes from a supplier that uses recycled material. It is then mixed, I like this part, Ben, mixed with fiberglass and other additives as part of a 3D printing ink, as it were. And it's treated for fire protection with an ultraviolet light stabilizer as well. Such a great idea.
If you're watching the video portion, I pulled up their website, and they kind of show these things in transport and different models. It's very it's they're definitely going for the modern angle of these things. They're very modern looking. So
and so the article does a great job of kind of highlighting what makes their solution so attractive, in my opinion. It says part of the efficiency of Azure Printed Homes process comes from a streamlined approach. So we're going to go through the steps real quick. First, customers choose and customize a design. You don't have to be locked into their design. You can take one of their base designs and modify it to your needs. Now, this part blows my mind. The printer, now it's in the factory, the printer needs only 1 day to print a home typically. It's then prefabricated with all the fixings, so to speak, including plumbing and electrical wiring, in a 4 to 15 day process, depending on the model of home you select and the modifications you make accordingly. The home is then delivered by truck within a couple of days. Azure Printed Homes claims their technique is 30% less expensive than traditional construction and 70% faster. So this could help with our housing crisis. It could help with housing for the homeless. All kinds of possibilities here with this sort of technology.
Yeah, and of course, being modular, there's a lot that opens up there as well, where you can, of course, kind of link them together, make even bigger square footage. On their site, they show like 1,000 square foot home, and they say that would cost about through their process about $200,000, but it's $1,000 for like everything, for the house to be completely plumbed and wired and built and transported. Right. And it's this one is definitely different out there, because like you said, when we talk about 3D printed homes, they essentially build a giant 3D printer at the site and then print it on site.
Yeah, that's right.
This one, and this one is movable. It's transportable, and that is certainly something that could be useful. There are so many applications for this, and hopefully they find a way to even more efficient as time goes on, but still seeing the video, seeing it in action, very, very cool. So I like this one a lot, and of course, hey, recycled plastic.
Gotta love that part.
You have to do something with it. So there you go. So story number one, ladies and gentlemen out there, you can see, of course, Ralph has included a link to their website as well as the article that he kind of pulled from. Story number two, if you go ahead, follow along with the show notes, because by the time you hear this, the show notes are up. So you can go, listen and follow along as we go. Story number two is a new Wi-Fi tech. And as weird as it sounds, one of my favorite parts of technology, oddly enough, is not the social bickering of technology, but one of my favorite parts is actually standards. I love new standards, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be a new kind of technology. It's not standard yet, but hey, you have to test something and try to get it integrated into the standard, and then everyone benefits, because when the standard is changed, everyone gets to benefit. So new technology, maybe a new standard, we'll see. A new Wi-Fi tech, and Ralph, even in my home, we have to have one of those repeaters, because it doesn't reach, from one side of the house to the other. But and I'm sure a lot of people do, because hey, it doesn't reach through one wall. This story, maybe it might actually be able to get through, a wall in your house at almost 10 miles. So story number two.
Yeah, this is an interesting story on so many levels. It comes from a fun website called wonderfulengineering.com. How can you resist that? It's great. Headline: new Wi-Fi tech tested at 9.9 miles, setting a new record. So we're going to learn a lot from this. Just love this article and love this whole topic. It was a revelation for me. So there's a company in Australia called Morse Micros Technology. So Australia's Morse Micros possessive. Halo Wi-Fi. Now this is an 802.11ah protocol. It's a standard so far. It's new and it's evolving, but their access point system based on Halo Wi-Fi recently set a new world record by achieving a 9.9 mile, or for the whole rest of the world, 15.9 kilometers range. Wow. And so for me, Ben, I don't know about you, but for me, I went, Halo Wi-Fi. Oh, I don't know about that. What's going on there? So I did a little bit of research here. Wi-Fi Halo is a wireless technology based on the IEEE 802.11ah protocol. So it does have some standardization on its base. It operates on sub 1 gigahertz frequencies, which allows for longer signal range and lower power consumption compared to traditional Wi-Fi. That's how this technology works. And back in January of this year, the company demonstrated Halo's potential with a 1.8 mile video call test in the high interference environment of a San Francisco beach area. So you can imagine how messy that environment is with cell traffic and Wi-Fi and on and on and on. So they did a 1.8 mile video call in that environment. Recently, they extended that record by almost 5 times, conducting successful tests in the rural California Joshua Tree National Park, which is kind of out in the desert area. But here are some of the key features of Morse Micros. Again, this is this Australian company we're talking about, Morse, M-O-R-S-E, Micros, Wi-Fi Halo system. So here's some of the key features. First, extended range. It can provide connectivity up to 1 kilometer, making it ideal for rural areas and large-scale Internet of Things deployments. That means all the things that we have internet dependency on, our smartphones, you name it. Low power consumption. This makes it suitable for battery-operated Internet of Things devices. High device capacity. This is mind-blowing. A single Wi-Fi Halo access point can connect with over 8,000 devices. Wow. Okay. Better penetration because of the sub-gigahertz frequency. The lower frequency allows it to penetrate barriers like walls more effectively. So Wi-Fi Halo is particularly beneficial for Internet of Things applications, smart city projects, and mesh networking systems. And in the show notes, this is why the show notes are so important, I added a whole bunch of tutorial links that were not in the article, by the way, but I added to learn more about Halo Wi-Fi if you're interested. And so there's some great articles there in the show notes. So it's cool stuff. And in the San Francisco test, connection speeds ranged from 11 megabits per second at 500 meters to 1 megabit per second at 1.8 miles. Now, anybody who knows about connectivity speed, 1 megabit is, it's maybe you can get some text messages and stuff like that. So we're not trying to say this is going to be comparable probably to what you're enjoying in your home right now, but that's not the point. In the recent Joshua Tree tests out in the Joshua National Forest, throughput reached 2 megabits per second over 9.9 miles. And I did a little Googling and researching on what can I do with 2 megabits per second. It's possible to support some very low resolution video, certainly text and so forth. So we're not talking about something that's going to replace what you have right now. We're talking about a technology that can help in certain situations, and we're going to expand on that in a moment. But so far, Ben, I think this is just so fascinating. I don't know if you were familiar with Halo Wi-Fi before or not, but I sure wasn't.
No, no, Halo is definitely a new kind of technology that I hadn't heard about. I am curious because like they're going out in the desert, and you can see the video here where they're kind of talking to the nice gentleman there, where they have an antenna and a receiver. But Rob, I'm very curious, like, what's the return for this? Because like you can have a very powerful kind of signal sent out, but like I don't think my laptop could send a signal back that could be read. I don't know, is there that back and forth communication, or is it only sending data to you?
That's a great. Is it simplex or duplex? That is a great question. I honestly don't know.
I don't know either. But even just receiving information like that is super important as well. So yeah.
That's a great follow-up question if you wanted to interview these guys. It'd be fun, I'm sure.
I honestly do. Yeah.
So we've talked about how in their recent Joshua National Forest or National Park test, they reached 2 megas per second over 9.9 miles. That was the big headline. Now, The rural environment's low interference, and pardon me, I'll try that again. The rural environment's low interference likely contributed to this impressive result, of course, highlighting Halo's suitability for outdoor applications. Ding, ding, ding. This is where it really makes sense, not in urban situations. Using Halo Wi-Fi for outdoor applications, such as farming, where cellular coverage is often lacking or too expensive. Since Halo Wi-Fi is intended for low power, long range communication, it might not be as helpful in cities with lots of Wi-Fi hotspots and cellular networks, right? On the other hand, its long range and low interference make it perfect for rural applications. This, Ben, I think, is what this technology's future is all about. It's not going to replace what you and I have in our homes right now. Of course not, I don't think. So that's the important part.
It wouldn't replace it, but I'm just thinking like in national park services, like if you could put one of these in a national park and you can pretty much guarantee, like, you tell people going in, like, connect your Wi-Fi to this Wi-Fi, and you could at least send out like let's say a thunderstorm is coming or, something, exactly. Or, lost hiker. Yes. You could send that information out to everyone in the national park. Yes. There's very, very, even though it's limited application, there's very real impactful application you can have with this.
Yeah. And as you spoke, I was thinking about here in Oregon, we just finished 2 million acre plus forest fires the past summer. Horrible. Anyway, all the firefighters out in the field, they're out in really remote parts of the state. What if they could get communication, to your point, at least simplex, at least receive information on their smartphones or other devices that say, hey, the fire has moved over here. We're redeploying you guys in addition to the radio and other communications they have. If they have visuals, maybe they could get through somehow with this long-range Wi-Fi. That could be very beneficial. But to wrap things up, this Australian company, again, called Morse Micro, if they continue development of Halo, it could lead to faster speeds and wider adoption, particularly in public Wi-Fi hotspots or, again, stressing rural connectivity solutions or remote wilderness situations, is to your point. So fun technology. It was a great light bulb off in my head about learning about Halo, and let's see where this technology goes. Yeah. And thanks to our friends down under for doing this work.
Very true. And for everyone out there, just want to give a little, a little bit of context, like, because I joked at the beginning, why can't we get Wi-Fi through walls and they're beaming it 10 miles away? I think the beauty of the low frequency, the sub 1, the 1 is it 1 gigahertz?
Sub 1 gig.
The sub 1 gigahertz. There's a reason that we use the 2.4. It's a great medium. The 5 gigahertz is available, but it's not very good. The throughput of this thing is limited by that 1 gigahertz. So it's not something that, like Ralph said, you want to use in your home, but that sub 1 gigahertz is kind of what lets it penetrate and go even further.
Right.
So, it's that trade-off, but they're finding a great application for, a great use case for it. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Story number 2. Story number 3. Let's go ahead and skip on over to to a little bit of science and check this one out. This is about blood stem cells, which already above my pay grade, and how I'm sure a lot of people out there have dealt with someone in their lives that have gone through, some kind of bone marrow transplant, either being a donor or needing a donor or anything like that. It's one of the more painful things, having to kind of cut a bone and get in there. It's not enjoyable for anyone involved in needing these things, but they're so crucially important. So, hey, maybe story number 3 could be a little bit of relief and maybe an answer. So
absolutely. And for our new listeners, if you're new with us, welcome. What I usually do and what Ben and I usually do on our Friday segments is the last story of the 4 is medical technology related, because that's something that's so important in my life. But today we're going to do story 3, which is medical technology related, and story 4 is also medical, but it's if you want something to walk away feeling better about the world and hopeful, these two stories I think are fantastic. So let's get into this. This story I got from the Telegraph, an outlet, a news outlet via MSN. And the headline here, I couldn't resist this. Scientists grow blood stem cells in breakthrough that could end the need for bone marrow donors. Let that headline sink in. Oh my gosh.
That's big.
I'm already feeling better. Okay, so here we go. Blood stem cells have been grown in a laboratory for the first time in a breakthrough that could end the need for bone marrow donors, as we said in the headline of the story. Currently, people suffering with conditions such as leukemia, bone marrow failure, or aplastic anemia require donated bone marrow or stem cells to replenish their blood. And a little side note that I put in, this is where I inject a little added value to these article notes on my own. I put a little side note about what aplastic anemia. This is a condition that occurs when your body stops producing enough blood cells. The condition leaves you fatigued and more prone to infections and uncontrolled bleeding. Yikes. So it's not
the three conditions you mentioned, the aplastic anemia was the one I had not heard of.
Yeah. So that's what I do with the show notes, Ben. Like you, if I go, wait a minute, what's that? I don't know about that. Not that I'm supposed to know everything, but I'm thinking, hey, what is that? And I put my curiosity inserts into the show notes. That's why coming out to computeramerica.com, getting the show notes is so helpful if you're really into this sort of stuff. But let's get back to the story. Here's the challenge and or problem, as it were, the research team set out to tackle. So here we go. But it can be difficult to get an exact bone marrow or stem cells to match a patient. And mismatched donor immune cells can attack the patient's own tissues, leading to severe illness or even death. There's also an ongoing shortage of donors. That's the horrible problem that we have in the world of bone marrow transplants. Excuse me. Now, here we go. Our Australian friends strike again. Now, scientists at the Murdoch Children's Research Institute in Melbourne, Australia, have shown it's possible to generate human blood stem cells in the lab. Wow. This opens the door to making a potentially unlimited supply of blood stem cells from a patient's own skin or hairs. This is where they're going to get the genetics, pulling it from your skin or hair. No more drilling into somebody's bone and extracting marrow.
Yeah, it's a very painful thing, and I don't blame donors for being like, you want me to lay down and let you crack my bones open and suck No, I get it. But this is a good, really an amazing breakthrough.
Yeah, and get this, any genetic defect could also be edited out of the genes they're pulling from the patient's skin or hair, right? So any genetic defect could also be edited out, leaving them with a perfect replacement. Wow.
Yeah, and I'm sure that and sorry to cut you off there, but if it's anything like CRISPR, and we've talked about CRISPR on the show before, where it's you get these treatments for genetic diseases due to this new technology, and the technology is only about 10 years old, so they only have about 10 years worth of evidence. But as far as I can tell, Ralph, like one series of treatments or even a single treatment is enough to cure you for the rest of your life. These genetic diseases, like it's not like come in every month and we'll keep you up to date. Like one and done, and it really is life changing.
Yeah, it's something else, isn't it? And I'll tell you what. Now, the next line I'm going to give you from the article is a good example of trends. So many of the stories we talk to you about, folks, are things that are coming. The twinkle in the eye, early stage research with implications that are very exciting. This fits somewhat that category because it says in the article here, the team has shown that human stem cells work when transplanted into animals, and they want now to move to human trials within the next 5 years. So this is a very careful, methodic process. It's not an over the night, snap your fingers kind of deal. So within 5 years, they hope to move to human trials. And then from there on, it could be a whole new world of medical wonder getting rid of bone marrow transplants. So scientists created the stem cells by placing blank stem cells, again from the hair or skin from the patient, in a chemical soup which mirrors conditions in the body where blood stem cells develop. So they imitated that natural process. And the study's lead researcher noted, quote, and this is a pretty long quote, but it's really good. The ability to take any cell from a patient, reprogram it into a stem cell, and then turn these into specifically matched blood cells for transplantation will have a massive impact on these vulnerable patients. He goes on to say, the way we envisage this therapy working is we would take mature cells from a patient, skin or hair, for example, and reprogram them and grow pluripotent stem cells. That means stem cells that can become any cell in a dish. We would then be able to differentiate those and grow blood stem cells. And these blood stem cells would then become the therapy that we give back to the patient. And because they have originally come from the patient's own cells, they are perfectly matched. Hallelujah. If nothing leaves you feeling better today, this story should.
No, really. And the fact that that we have moved and for maybe for the younger audience, they're like, stem cells, what's the big deal? But people who grew up, in the early 2000s and whatnot, or were around for that, like Ralph, stem cells were such a hot button issue because of where they were sourced. It was mired, and the medical science was, bogged down with the ethical implications of of these things,
embryos,
exactly, the need for embryo and the research, the fact that they've been able to generate stem cells from an individual's any kind of cell has really opened up what I think a lot of scientists were saying was possible with these stem cells. So and hey, you donated the cells, you're going to get them back. You're just going to get them back the way you need them. That is such a great story because, again, it solves one of the hardest things to solve. Potentially, like you said, glimmer in the eye. We'll see, but still, it's great research to kind of go through and follow through on.
Absolutely.
So, story number 4. I guess with, we at the beginning of the show, we mentioned Ralph's eye was going through a little bit of a thing. So I guess he went out and said, technology can just replace this. Let's just pop this eye out and go pop in a new one. I'm assuming is what Ralph was going for here. But no, story number 4, this one, and yet again, another use case for the infamous Raspberry Pi. The little computer on a chip that, so many people have done so many cool projects on. And here we are again. So, Ralph, story number 4.
This story hits on so many cylinders of cleverness and seeing possibilities with an ingredients. It's sort of like a chef with a variety of ingredients and going, how can I mix these together and make something kind of new? This is a great example of that in the world of science and technology. This story comes from tomshardware.com, a classic outlet, of course, been around for many, many years. Headline, Raspberry Pi powered third eye helps visually impaired people navigate the world with artificial intelligence. It's got so much going on in just the headline, right? So let's get into the story. There's some great links here, some images in the show notes. So if you're listening to us as a podcast, please come out to computeramerica.com, get the show notes, and you can see what we're talking about. So starts off by saying there are some Raspberry Pi projects that are made to make a difference in the world, and this creation is definitely one of them, and I agree. Maker and developer Dr. Khairul Alam, that's A-L-A-M is how the last name is spelled. So maker and developer Dr. Khairul Alam has created a wearable headset out of a pair of glasses with a special camera system in place to help visually impaired persons be less reliant on third parties to help when walking around. So side note here, pardon me. Dr. Alam is a developer, maker, and hardware hacker, currently working as a faculty member at the University of Asia Pacific in Dhaka, Bangladesh. The other thing I love about this, you think about all these research things going on all over the world. Here's something coming from Bangladesh.
Yeah.
And another side note, folks, Ben and I are familiar with Raspberry Pi, but maybe not everybody is. So what is Raspberry Pi? A Raspberry Pi is a series of small, affordable, single-board computers developed by the Raspberry Pi Foundation in the United Kingdom. And these computers are about the size of a credit card and are designed to promote computer science and education and hobbyist projects like what we're talking about. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah, and there's just something about the Raspberry Pi, like they have made it so cost effective, so simple that like when they say they made it for science, computer science education and hobbyist projects, if you are going to do anything as a hobbyist with computers, miniaturize and something remote or whatever, Raspberry Pi is like the go-to. Like there's not even a competitor because it's kind of like a charitable foundation. All proceeds kind of go into education and other sources. Like Ralph, there's not even like another competitor on the block. It's just Raspberry Pi. It does everything you need. It's almost perfect, I dare say.
Yeah, this is a great example of using Raspberry Pi for, in this case, doing something wonderful for the visually impaired. So going on with the story, the Raspberry Pi powered third eye, as Dr. Alam calls it, project relies heavily on artificial intelligence to help interpret the surroundings for the wearer. It uses the Xiao, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, XIAO, Xiao ESP32S3 Sense module for video input and scans each frame to evaluate the environment. Scans each frame. Wow. Now, in the show notes, I provide a side note about what is this Xiao ESP32S3 Sense module, and you can learn all about it. There's all the geeky details if you want to dig into this, and I have links to learn even more embedded into the story. I wasn't familiar with it. It's a pretty fascinating little bit of technology. So if you're wondering, as the article goes on to say, if you're wondering how the person wearing the headset is supposed to receive input from the module, you'll be delighted to know that a simple headphone is all that's required. The photograph in the article really shows that well. The Xiao ESP32S3 Sense module sends information to a Raspberry Pi, which then creates a text-based description of what it sees. The text is then converted to speech and played through the wearer's earpiece, all happening in a subfraction of a second. To me, it's just mind-blowing. This Raspberry Pi powered system is connected to the Xiao ESP32S3 Sense module, which has a built-in camera sensor and a digital microphone. And it has 8 megabytes of flash memory, but also has a micro SD card slot. And the Xiao ESP32S3 receives power from the Raspberry Pi system, which can be powered by a battery bank in your pocket. So what a fun combination of technologies to create a talking. So I would imagine, Ben, you have these eyeglasses on with this gear on there, and it might be saying to you, there's a door to the right. There's a door coming up in 2 feet. Well, I don't know for sure, but I think that's what they're alluding to here and what Dr. Alam is up to.
Yeah, and that's really going to be where the AI training kind of comes into play. And what information does it really tell you? Because is it just going to tell you, you are on a sidewalk, over and over again, or is it going to start describing, person with dog coming, on the left side of the sidewalk, that kind of thing. But hey, that's where artificial intelligence. Hey, we had a squeak one story in there for that. Though I will say, the fact that he's able to do this, and this is obviously something that is I wouldn't say like a hobbyist level. Like this is someone who's put a lot of research and passion into this.
Right.
But you know what this really makes me think of, Ralph? It makes me think Google Glass came out just a little bit before its time. Like maybe that's something that companies need to maybe revisit now that we have AI on board, and we can use artificial intelligence to really bring out, the what these Google Glasses could have been. I don't know, maybe. You know what I'm talking about? Like, the old Google prototype that they kind of killed off. Maybe it's time to revisit that. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So there you go. So story number 4, a very cool one. And again, if you want to find any of those stories, 1, 2, 3, or 4, you can go on over to Computer America, and we have them in the show notes, and you can see all of them right there. You can fact check Ralph, and trust me, he didn't make any of this up. As crazy as it is, he didn't make any of this up. But for those who are following along, you may notice there are more stories, and that brings us to our honorable mentions segment, which, as we say, they are not less, they are not worse, they are not silver medalists. No, these are just stories that we try to keep our show more condensed, more time sensitive. And so Ralph finds an incredible amount of stories to bring to you, but hey, we try to keep it short. So Ralph, let's at least give the nice folks the headlines so they can go out to the show notes over at computeramerica.com and follow up if any of these sound interesting to them. So honorable mentions.
Yeah, here we go. We've got 4 honorable mentions. First one comes from medicalexpress.com. Headline: Novel light-based technique shows 90% accuracy in early prostate cancer detection. Wow.
The real trick was getting the giant camera to fit up there to take a picture of the prostate. That was the real trick. Who knew?
Yeah.
Getting the flashlight in there was the hard part, but they figured it out.
Yeah. And this headline was irresistible. It comes from Space Daily. Headline: World's strongest battery. You hear a lot about chemical makeup of batteries. You hear about longevity, recharge time, and so forth. But here's the headline: World's strongest battery could enable lightweight, energy-efficient vehicles. Space Daily, interesting outlet. Great story.
And for anyone out there who can't see, who is simply listening to the audio portion, this may not surprise you. The answer is denim. Denim is the perfect material. So that's what the battery tends to be.
There you go. And the next one from extremetech.com. Got to love that name. Extremetech.com. Headline: Microscopic 2D magnets could replace transistors for super fast computing. Isn't that interesting? Got to check that one out. And let's see. Here's our last one. Number 4 honorable mention for this week. This comes from Pennsylvania State University story. They published it on their website. Headline: Seeing visual like a butterfly. Seeing like a butterfly. Optical invention enhances camera capabilities. A fascinating research story. You've got to check it out. I just love this one.
As always, anytime that technology tends to, really try, whenever technology imitates nature is almost like a perfect testing ground, because it has a lot of time and a lot of variations to really show what works and what doesn't. So technology imitating nature, always good. Ralph, the music means that we are going to wrap up here. Thank you so much for bringing us these stories. Ladies and gentlemen, computeramerica.com if you want to find out more about these. And as always, Ralph, I'm glad that you're okay, that you feel okay. I'm glad to be back, everyone. Computer America is officially back, and I'm so happy that we can. And until next time, have a great day. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.